and the filmmakers in the house of the 2 films we saw, please come on down. Can I get a couple chairs? My name is Hans Krieger. I'm a board member of RoxFilms. And we just want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Please have a seat. Thank you for all of you guys joining us this afternoon. First, just give me your name and the film that you represent.
My name is Alana Logan. I did The Womb.
Hi, my name is Kaleem Nazim, End of Isolation.
My name is Sarah Short, and I'm the director of the End of Isolation film.
That's great. I appreciate that. I think that I want to start with the dance. And I think that the most important part to me was some of the things that you said in the dance part about honesty, inner peace. Can you expound on that a little bit for me? Because I was, the form of dance that you had, can you explain what that was? Classical, non-classical, where did it lie in the spectrum?
Sure. So I grew up a dancer. So I'm classically trained, ballet, tap, jazz, modern, contemporary, all the things. So the first piece was kind of like a fusion, if you will, a little bit of contemporary. And through that piece, it was a live piece. So it did start as contemporary. The piece started as The Womb. It was supposed to be me, in this kind of confined space. Kind of moving about, but not really finding my footing yet. And the more that I had gotten through the piece, I started to remember the things that I had done as a child, which, if you saw some of the clips, it was a little bit of tap, a little bit of hopping, and I currently pop now. That's my main style. So that's some of the genres that I touched upon.
Okay. I think that the one thing that, like I said previously, that stood out to me was the honesty and the interpretation of the movement of the dance, the background information that I was seeing on the screen. And you had great in-sync value with those individuals, and that was your 10-year-old self?
Yeah.
Back then?
Yeah.
Tell me how long it took for you to synchronize that in the piece that you completed.
Yeah, so just to touch on the honesty part, I think what happens, or something that I realized kind of growing up, and especially as a child, we're always looking to please our parents, right? And that is the main thing that we want. If we draw a picture, we want to show our parents. If we, get a good grade, we want to show our parents. And so for a while, I didn't feel like I had my honesty in my movement. It was just something that I was generating to get my mother's validation. So that's kind of something that I had touched upon. And I had realized that, that was why I was seeking this outside kind of validation. So, moving in this, the beginning, this kind of womb is just, like I said, still confined to a space. And then the more that I, explored who I was honestly, and speaking to my younger self of being like, we don't need this outside validation. But those pieces that I did and the reflection that I had, I had the piece behind me, those were pieces that my mom kind of directed. So that was me reclaiming myself in that.
That's fabulous. I want to thank you for that, because we all enjoyed that and have true meaning to continue to reflect on what that was. So appreciate that. So curate a few pieces that are together so that we can have a common thread between it all. This was a tough one, you know? We're going to try and talk about it a little bit. So please, again, introduce yourself.
My name is Kaleem Nazim. I'm with the film End of Isolation. I'm originally from Arkansas.
So give me a little bit about the theater piece. So you went to 10 cities. Am I correct?
Yes, so Khalid was one of the film's participants. He wasn't on the actual tour, so probably better suited to answer.
Okay.
Can I make a quick joke about the thread between our
Quick
films?
joke is great.
I also do all of everything I do to try to please my mom, so I relate very deeply.
Thanks for that thread, though. Good, listen. You had
So what was the question about the tour? Yes, we traveled on a
you had a 10-city tour.
10-city tour, mostly formerly incarcerated actors on a small converted school bus
Mostly in Florida.
through epic floods, global heat waves.
Okay. How long did that take?
2 months.
2 months. First city, I believe, was Berkeley, California,
That's where we started.
where you started. And from there, your next one was in what town?
We went to Austin, Texas.
Tell me a little
First.
bit about Texas.
What do you want to know?
What I want to know. Well,
What happened?
You did your layout of your play.
Yeah.
Was it in a jail, or was it in a theater, or what was it?
Good question. Yeah, every city it was different. We performed inside the jail in Philadelphia. In Texas, it was a community center. You saw in St. Louis, it was a big top, circus tent. In another city in Fayetteville, Arkansas, it was in the military museum on the tarmac. So yeah, we had to get creative, but everything also had to fit on the bus. The lighting, the stage,
Wow.
our food, our kitchen.
Plus the people.
Plus the people.
Okay. And how many stagehands came with you to set up lighting?
We all became stagehands.
Were-
There was one stage manager,
Okay.
one bus driver, because you can only fit 9 people on the bus.
Okay.
And then, yes, 7 of us were actors. We all had to play many roles, many hats. And every performance happened on time, standing ovations. We didn't like each other at the end of the 2 months at all, but we were proud of what we did.
Okay. Sounds real good. Interesting. And when you got down to your last play, at your last city, how did that end?
Well, the last performance was in Atlanta, so that was the 27th performance. Well, I remember the next day I got 3 massages in a row. I was like, am I breaking a record here? I only signed up for 1, but then I was like, can I have another? Yeah, I mean, we were happy to have a break from each other. It was a struggle bus, but it was really the art that kept us together. Every night when we got on stage, all of our little quibbles and squabbles fell away, and it was just like perfection every time, It's like the closest I know to what it feels like to be in an orchestra, being an actor in that way, where everyone plays their part so perfectly and beautifully, and, the art emerges from that. It's an incredible experience.
Okay, great. Mr. Nassim, I think that I wanted to ask you about the time that you were incarcerated.
Yes, sir.
And the years that you were in. I know that when you go to jail, you have to be arrested for a rule that was broken. But once you're in confinement and in jail, they can actually choose anything they want to put you in solitary confinement. Talk to us a little bit about some of the crazy things that they put men in places that is one of the worst places for society to understand?
That's a good question, because it's a lot of things that you can be placed in solitary confinement for. And I'm just going to reflect on me, some of the times that I found myself in solitary confinement.
Yes, sir.
One time, the most silliest thing that I was placed in solitary confinement for was just saying no. I was watching TV, and an officer came back doing count. Now, mind you, a lot of officers do counting the residents of the place differently. Some would have you stand in place, some would make you go to your cell. So I was just so happened to be standing in front of the TV, which he called count. I was watching the news, because 6 o'clock count. I was watching the news, she did her count, and then she came back to me and like, did you hear me not tell everyone to stand in front of their cell? And I said no. And she left out of the barracks and placed me in solitary confinement for that infraction. Another time I was placed in solitary confinement, where in the film I said solitary confinement is the most dangerous place in prison, because that's where the suicide rate is high. Commit suicide. I refused to go to work me and about 300 other more individuals, we refused to go to work. So they took me out into the field and basically tried to force me to work. I still wouldn't work. I was placed in solitary confinement, but before I was placed in solitary confinement, I was physically assaulted, stripped, basically down to my drawers, sprayed with mace, and then, placed in what they call the quiet cell. And the quiet cell is the last cell that individuals are placed in before their execution. So at the time that I was, confined to the quiet cell, I contemplated suicide. And it was just by the grace of God that I didn't, have an active plan, but I did have suicidal tendencies. So you can be placed in solitary confinement for a range of things, but I would just narrow it down by saying this here to the audience, that a lot of times, an individual had to ask me this here during the course of my incarceration. He said, Colleen, on a daily basis, you must ask yourself, do you have the spirit of a free man or the spirit of a slave? So when you start governing your life as a free man, that's a threat to the administration, and you can find yourself in solitary confinement.
Understood. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. One quick question about, and then we're going to just throw it out to the audience a little bit, because I was really wanted to know the big differences that you both have seen between Syria and American jails.
Okay, you're referring to when I was held in Iran as a political hostage. Yeah, I lived in Syria, so you're correct about that. But, well, the US, I've been speaking out. It was 15 years ago that I was captured while working as a journalist in the Middle East. And, the US invented the practice of solitary confinement. It's been exported to other countries. And we do it on a far larger scale per capita than any country in the world, any country in history. So in our prison system, which is this phenomenon of mass incarceration, is so blown out of proportion that you need a control mechanism in order to maintain an overpopulated, under-resourced, completely broken system, right? And so one of the main things that I have exposed through my journalism and my work is that so many activists, so many people fighting for human rights are put into solitary confinement to silence them. Because if people inside were able to organize and fight for their rights, then our prison system couldn't exist as the monstrosity that it is today. I believe that solitary confinement enables the large-scale brutality and torture that we see in our prison system.
So let's just say for a number real quick, out of 1,000 people, solitary confinement was 3 out of 1,000, 30 out of 1,000?
Oh, in our prison systems?
In Iran situation.
These systems, I mean, Iran is a, totalitarian regime. This information is not accessible, just like it isn't in our
It's
system.
not accessible, so
Yeah.
you wouldn't know.
I would not know. No one would be able to say that for sure.
Okay.
But I do know that in Iran, I was a political hostage, right?
Yes.
So I was being held in hopes that they could get some kind of concession from the US government in exchange for my life, right, and my freedom.
Yes.
And so it made sense that they would need to silence me. They didn't want me to get,
Yes.
they didn't want it to get out how I was being treated. They wanted the pressure to be maximum, right, for the US to do something for me. I was held incommunicado, no information. So in or out, right? And that's the function of solitary confinement.
Yes.
But it also, I forgot your question. Sorry.
I was really just trying to find out a number as to...
I don't have the number. Nobody has the number. But what I was getting at is that in Iran, it's clearly used for political purposes, right? It's people that are fighting within the country for democracy. In the U.S., people don't think of it as being used for political purposes, but I would argue that if we had those numbers, we would see that in many cases, it's used as a control mechanism to break people, to control people, to silence dissent.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Nassim, do you have anything to add as far as numbers are concerned? Because I just want the audience to get a feel of what actually goes on in jails. I have a little something with jails myself that I volunteer for, and I just wanted to know from your perspective, because you were in for how long?
I was in for
9 years.
yes, sir.
And what are the numbers as far as solitary confinement is concerned per 1,000?
Well, I would say it like this. I answer that question by saying this, that we have over 18,000 people in the Arkansas prison system that are, housed in some type of capacity. And each one of those units has a special unit that is designed for solitary confinement or administrative isolation or some form of 23 hours and 3 of lockdown, having a person locked down in a cell by himself or herself for 23 hours a day with 1 hour of recreation. So if I was to just make a general guess on how many people, I would say this here, that each of those institutions in Arkansas keep those cells full. At the Commons unit, you have approximately 2,000 people. So on any given day at that unit, you're going to have 10% of the unit, which is 200 people. That's going to be in solitary confinement for any given reason.
Wow.
So, it's like when the initial question that you have, what's the difference between one institution and another? I would say there's no oppression covers the same grounds, no matter where you go. It's oppression. When I was growing up, I used to always hear the saying, and it's a Ghetto Boy saying, I'm from the hood. And it says, it's here, your hood is no different than mine. Where when we talking about solitary confinement and oppression, your style of oppression isn't different from the next style of oppression. It's still oppression. It still suppresses the spirit of man. And, if I may, I like to just say this here, as a society, we have to stop becoming practiced and turning our heads to atrocities that we see in our society, because that's the only way that exists. A lot of times, like when we think about our penal system, we have to just be honest as a society. It's just an extension of slavery. When we talk about the proliferation of prisons in our country, it's the extension of slavery. When I think about the prisons in Arkansas, 80% of the prisons in Arkansas are built on plantations, former plantations, that are modern day plantations, where we are actively suppressing the spirit of men. So it's just something that's a society we have to, face, we have to deal with, and we have to stop becoming practicing turning our head to the atrocities that we see in our society. So I can go on and on.
I understand, but thank you very much. Any last words from you?
For the audience.
Last words.
Oh, well, then we're going to throw to the audience.
Yeah, I would like to just invite you all to just take a minute right now to feel what you're feeling. Notice what you're feeling. Notice what arose for you during the film. What feelings are there? Just a little popcorn style, can people say a few feelings, emotions?
Hurt.
Yeah. Hurt?
Anger.
Anger?
Unsettling.
Unsettling.
Shame.
Shame.
Disbelief.
Disbelief.
Rage.
Rage.
Fear.
Say that again, sir?
Fear.
Fear. I just want to make little space for those emotions. And it helps me to connect with you all. I didn't know what you were feeling out there, And I'm curious also if there are any other feelings as you remember the film. Were there moments that you loved, where you felt, emotions on some, maybe the other side of the spectrum? It's okay if you didn't, I'm just curious. I understand this conversation really took a turn of like how horrific this system is, right? But I also want to remember that, yes, sir?
The suicide reenactment brought back a lot of pain for memories.
It brought a lot of pain for you, yeah. Thank you, sir. What's that, sir?
When they tore down the workhouse.
When they tore down the workhouse, what'd you feel?
Just relief, as far as accomplishment, because the building was there to serve no purpose, but at the same time, as long as it still had a reason to keep on going.
You felt a sense of relief. So everyone take a minute to feel that in your body right now, relief, yes?
I just wanted to ask all of you, sorry.
This is okay, yeah.
This is fine. Go right ahead.
Is it?
Yeah.
What did you want?
Sorry.
What you-
Both of these films are very sort of heavy, and although we talked about it not really being sort of like joy for End of Isolation, because in the end they tear down the workhouse and everything like that. But it's not. It was difficult to go through, right? And I can see your pain too, right? Is that you're trying to come to some sort of acceptance, right? So I'm wondering if it felt cathartic. I'm wondering if it felt free. How did that, you had so much, and now you have these things, you have dance, you have theater that is helping you release this sort of pain that you've been carrying and continue to carry. It doesn't go away. We're all like these little Russian dolls that, set us all in there, but we find ways for it to be released. So I'm just wondering how that has been for you and your journey with both of these films.
Yeah, what feels cathartic to me is to hear back from you, and to know that this film will reach the people that need it. Our North Star is educational rights, to get it into colleges, universities, right, into curriculums, to show people that change is not inevitable, but it is possible. You can't watch this film and say it's not possible to shut down a jail, right? And that's what really keeps me going, is to know that young people, we want to expand the definition and the vision of what is possible. And I think that looking at people inside prisons, like Colleen, like the protagonist in this film, expands that definition, while grounding us in the reality, right? Like a grounded hope, a hope that is based in reality and experience and the knowledge of what it takes. Yeah.
So what's the future for the film? Are we going to take it to the next level? You just did 27.
Can I,
Oh.
sorry, want to hear them about their catharsis.
Oh,
Sorry.
no.
I agree with you that the film is heavy, the content of the film is heavy. However, you know, like, just in total honest, life is heavy. As far as, you know, there are situations that we go through in life that are very heavy. But I learned this when I was incarcerated. It's a poem by Rumi that's called The Guest House. And if you get a chance to read the poem, and it starts off like, this being human, just this being human, is a guest house. And all your feelings and emotions, just let them in and experience it. And then I also use the King saying that this too shall pass. For almost 30 years of my life, I was told that I would never see this side of the planet again. When I got out, I went to Senegal. I visited the door no return, because just to make a lie out of that name, because I returned from my ancestors. So that was very spiritual and uplifting for me. So when I think about the experiences that I have went through during my life and where I am now, to get to experience, you know, being on this side of the planet as a free man, to be able to go out of the country, to be able to share with individuals, to be able to impart my experiences, no matter how traumatic they were, to get the general public to understand the practice of solitary confinement, isolation, to humanize individuals who are in prison by looking at, you know, my life story, and to understand that people are more than their worst acts, you know, is kind of liberating and lethargic to me. So even though we tell the story of isolation and solitary confinement, and it's a real heavy topic. However, it's like when we read through the lines, like, okay then, you was there and now you're here, and you're doing this and you're doing that. Now, who would ever believe that I've been out for 8 years now. I'm the co-director of Incarcerate now. So it was once upon a time in my life that I thought I would never be on this side of the planet. But that's a testament to God. You know, I feel that just I'm long-winded, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
I'm sorry, I'm long-winded, but I'm gonna shut it down after this statement, because I think I got to, you know, kind of put my life in perspective. And I look at myself as a miracle. Because I was once told by the state of Arkansas that I would die in prison. And man,
Glad to see you. Glad to see you. Good.
So I think just to touch on the art, my piece was, I think, heavy, but in a different way. I think, other than being incarcerated, right, in a other physical place, I felt incarcerated internally, right? So I felt like I was, you know, in this space of not feeling well, right? I couldn't be free from, you know, this hypothetical thing, you know, my mother's expectations. So I think creating the piece was very personal to me. I think it started as something that was, you know, kind of small, and I was just like, okay, wait, let's just do something, I can dance for 12 minutes or, you know, make something that means something. But I think that over the span of time, I think I realized that the way that we use art is a surrender, right? Art doesn't hit the audience unless we surrender it. There is no way that the audience is able to meet us in the middle unless we offer that. So I think, you know, even just by observing, right, by observing the piece, and I can only imagine, you know, what it was like, you know, being in the audience to witness that. Somebody has to surrender their story to be able to say, hey, will you meet me in the middle? You know, and I think that's really, really important. So, you know, I learned in that process of creating my own that I said, you know, it was a very emotional experience creating it, creating a monologue, creating, you know, all of these things and realizing exactly what I felt, trying to interpret what I felt as a child, right? And a child never really expressing what they actually feel because they're scared of the outcome, you know, of expressing that. And me being 26 now, right, and it's, you know, when I was 9, really, some of those groups were when I was 7. You know, so just having this, you know, this whole life of being like, you know, what was I feeling at the time to be able to make this piece real for the audience and make it real for me. So, you know, at the end was liberating, but in the process was, you know, pretty difficult. You know, but I'm glad I did it, so.
Thank you very much. What I see through the three of you guys is the resilience, the strength that each one of you have is incredible. The things that you've been through at such a young age of 26 is incredible. And I think... No, but I think that they did a marvelous job. Can I have some more questions? What do you have?
Yes, for each of you, first off, I love dance, and I could see your classical training, and you took that classical training and your imagination and took us on an emotional journey. Mission accomplished. That was absolutely gorgeous. I loved it. And for you, I'm so sorry I don't know your name, Arkansas gentleman. But I just want to say, just your sitting on the stage brings tears of joy. You know, I mean, just my heart, the compassion that you've shown, everything. I mean, because you could have easily come out and been, you know, very, very different. But instead, you came out and said, how can I make the world a better place? And you were doing it. And it's just fantastic. And I did wonder though, so while you were there and now, did you have family helping you, or did you just need to create your own family there and here and now? How is that, what your support? Who's supporting you emotionally and spirit?
A lot of times, when we think about transitioning, you know, people growing in prison, most of the time, has been take on a youngster. Like I went in when I was 17 years old. The only reason that I truly survived prison because someone adopted me and said, well, I'm not going to let the horrors of prison happen to him. So, and then the human spirit is a self-correcting spirit. So, I went in when I was 17 years old. I made a mistake when I was very young. But my maturity, as I aged, you know, I aged out of a lot of my things I did when I was young. So you asked the question, you know, who was supporting me? For the most part, it was individuals who were doing the time with me that adopted me as, you know, mentors. I had mentors when I was incarcerated that had life without sentences, that had done 30 and 40 years by the time that I even got there. And then, you know, it was just this that God, self-correcting spirit that was in me that I developed and allowed myself to have a healthy relationship with the world, because a lot of times when you're incarcerated, you can't get cut off from the world. But I refused to be cut off from the world, even though my body was incarcerated. I still allowed myself to have a healthy relationship with the world where I communicated with people. I didn't close myself off. And my wife always tells me I have never met a stranger, so that's just a part of my nature.
And Frigo, I just wondered, how did you choose where you were going to go?
You're talking about with the
For
film?
your tour, how did you choose?
Oh, the tour. Oh, how did we choose? We had a deep relationship with different organizations around the country. I mean, after I got back from my incarceration, I traveled a lot with my book about, you know, my memoir, and then the organizing that I did since then as a journalist. Okay, actually, the story, thank you for the question. Sometimes it takes me a minute to remember. Do you remember the gentleman, the judge in Arkansas? John Comstock, lovely man. When my play first premiered in San Francisco, he came out to San Francisco with his whole family because he somehow read about it, knew about something about me and my work. And I was so moved by that. We started a friendship, and he was like, "You've got to bring this to Arkansas." And I was like, "John, we're going to find a way. We're going to do it." But then during the pandemic, you know, just being in lockdown and being isolated, there wasn't a minute of the day that I wasn't thinking about people in solitary confinement. I mean, that's one of the differences between anyone who survived solitary confinement, but like, you know, as a white person, as a person of privilege in this country, most white people can just forget, right? Or like many people in general can just forget every day that our neighbors are being incarcerated. I can't. It's never going to happen, you know? And then during the pandemic, it just got amplified. So we started to talk about it with some of my core autistic, you know, collaborating partners, and we just came up with the idea of this tour and started to reach out. And then the Pulitzer Center got behind it, so that was like a big yes. They were our, you know, our sponsors. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
First and foremost, welcome home, brother, and thank you for doing the work that you do. I'm David Del Valle. I served 10 years in state prison. I came home 3 years ago, and now I help people get degrees inside, and we run a mentorship program. With my boy Chris, we were locked up together. We did a
Welcome.
Glad to see you.
Y'all family, thank y'all for doing the work. My question is, so there's been like some reform around solitary confinement in Massachusetts. Some people are like, oh, well, we give them a tablet and I let them order 1 bag of chips and a bag of saltines and everything's okay. And I'm a abolitionist, I'm a little crazy. I think the world should be better places and we should abolish a lot of things. But people think that we can reform our way. But I think seeing this film really taught me that, like, you can't dress up a nightmare, you can't dress up torture and make it look real pretty. So I think, what do I say when I'm at the state house and people try to justify this torture as some form of justifiable accountability and try to reform their way.
Yeah.
So it's like, what type of advice would you give me when I'm in these spaces? I do a lot of advocating, and I don't always have the best language, so please, if you can, any feedback.
Such a good question. Do you want to take a crack at it, or do you want to go?
I agree with what you just said.
I think we both agree,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, you know, the film, I try not to use the word abolition in the film. I think it snuck in there a few times, but all these people are abolitionists. But I think the word shuts down the conversation for a lot of people, because the word abolition sounds like, wait a minute, you're just going to let everybody out? No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is this overall, if you look at the system, it's doing far more harm than it's doing good. It's not doing its mandate. What it said it's supposed to do is make us safer. That's not happening. When people are coming out more traumatized, more damaged, I think John Comstock, the judge, speaks to it perfectly. He's like, it's broken from the beginning to the end. There's no reform. That, you know, if something is broken by design, you can't reform that. You have to start building outside of that system. And that's why I refer to it as reimagining justice outside prisons and jails. And that's not to say that we forget about our loved ones, our brothers and sisters inside, because those are the people that are always going to be on the front lines of reimagining, the ones closest to the problem, right? So the reforms, I think there are reforms that can help keep people alive, keep people going, you know? And we can't dismiss those as not important. We need wins. But if we're not building out to fight, you know, violence in our communities, to heal trauma, then it's never, you know, the prison, we can pass all the laws in the world, but the prison system is never going to shrink.
And I'll just go back to what you had said. I think it's a false hope to try to put lipstick on a pig and say it's not a pig anymore. It's just not going to happen. I think the best way to abolish the prison system is to educate the general public of what they're really seeing is or not seeing about the prison system. That's the best. I think that's one of the best tools that we have is education. Because if you ask a person, you know, like the average person, what would you do if we didn't have prison? What would our society look like if we didn't have prisons in our society? You know, for the most part, people would say, well, we need prisons, you know, which we don't. We need more rehabilitative programs as far as, you know, wraparound programs in our society, mental health programs and things of that nature. Because in my way of thinking, you know, a lot of times when people find themselves in prison, it's because society has failed them in some type of way. When the sister from St. Louis was talking about how society failed her, I thought about my mother. When I was 9 years old, my mother, for food stamps, getting too many food stamps, I had 5 other siblings and me. My mother went to jail. The judge never did take into consideration what would happen to her kids while she did 6 months in jail. But I can vividly remember me having to, while my mother was in jail, my oldest brother was 13 years old, and it was us 5 kids in the house by ourselves. Because my mother, you know what I'm saying, they locked my mother up for food stamp law. So that's how the system failed my mother, and it failed me at the same time, because that pushed me, you know what I'm saying, into criminality. I told you I'm long-winded.
I got you.
So, but I want to just get this here out there, just one last statement.
Go for it.
That most of times, the majority of times, we're seeing crimes apart, and that need to be looked at. So, yeah.
Hey, thank you. We can go on for the rest of the afternoon.
Can I make
But thank you guys so much.
Can I make a quick connection, one more between the two pieces, and just
Go for it.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated what you said, and I want to put it back on everyone, if that's okay. I loved what you said about freeing yourself from your own internal prison. You know, I think that when I first got out of prison, that used to bug me sometimes when people would be like, oh, this yoga class is torture. I'm like, you don't know what torture is, you know, right? But like, I really think I've come a long way in realizing like, we're all on a freedom journey, right? Every single one of us. And prison is a metaphor. It's a reality. But it's also a metaphor for what it means to be human in this society, in this world, in the limited identities and limitations put on the identities that we're born into. And so I would just ask everyone here to leave this theater and ask yourself, what are you in the process of freeing yourself from? What are you in the process of freeing yourself from, and how are you inviting other people into the process? And that's what art does. That's what you did with your dance, and that's what we hope to do with that film, this film. How can we invite other people into our own process of freeing ourselves?
That was beautifully said. Thank you so much. And this is it for the day. Thank you so much.